behavior over the last few months. "Your son doesn't greet me like he used to," he had observed. "He used to stay and chat with me when he came to visit. Now he rushes in and out as if he's ashamed of something." His words had confirmed what my heart already knew. I had lost my son long before the slap that night. The folder I had asked Joseph for contained documents no one in my family had ever seen. Bank certificates, property titles, investment records that Robert and I had kept secret for decades. Documents that proved the poor widow living on a modest pension was actually a woman with enough resources to change lives with a single decision. 10 minutes later, Joseph appeared in the parking lot with the folder in his hands. "Aurora, what's going on? You look very upset," he asked as he handed me the documents. "It has to do with Ethan's wedding," I explained briefly what had happened in the ballroom, and I saw his face harden with every detail. "That woman is a viper," he muttered. "I always knew it." "Joseph, in a few minutes, a man named Carlos will arrive. When you see him, tell him I'm waiting for him here," I asked. "And Joseph, after tonight, many things are going to change. I want you to know you have always been like family to me." His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "You're family to me too, Aurora. Do what you have to do." As Joseph returned to the building, I opened the folder and began to review documents I hadn't looked at in months. The first was a bank statement showing a balance of $5,400,000 in an investment account. The second was the property title for a downtown office building that generated monthly rent of $50,000. The third was the deed to a beach house I had bought as an investment 10 years ago. Robert had been a genius at investments, starting with a small import business and turning it into a silent empire. Together, we had made the decision to live modestly to protect our privacy and our family's security. "Visible wealth attracts problems," Robert used to say. "Invisible wealth gives you power." I never imagined I would have to use that power against my own son. Each document in that folder represented years of hard work and smart decisions. The flower shop where I worked 3 days a week wasn't because I needed the money, but because I liked to stay active and connected to the community. The old car I drove wasn't due to economic limitations, but because I had learned that unnecessary ostentation only brings problems. My apartment, the one Juliet so coveted, was actually the least valuable property in my portfolio. I had bought it not for its economic value, but for the memories it held. It was where Robert and I had spent our last years together, where we had planned our future, where he had passed away in my arms after a brave battle with cancer. But there was something else in that folder that would change everything for Ethan and Juliet. For the last 3 years, since my son had started having financial problems, I had been secretly paying many of his debts. The credit card payments he thought came from a work bonus were actually coming out of my account. The special discount on his rent that he had negotiated with his landlord was money I transferred monthly. Without Ethan knowing, I had been subsidizing his irresponsible lifestyle for years. The luxurious apartment he lived in, the car he drove, even some of the expenses for the wedding that was taking place at that very moment had been made possible by my secret financial support. I had thought I was helping my son through a difficult time, not realizing I was financing his transformation into a person I didn't recognize. The bank records showed monthly transfers totaling $4,500 that had kept the sinking ship of Ethan's financial life afloat. Money he thought came from work bonuses or tax refunds, when in reality it was his mother desperately trying to protect him from the consequences of his irresponsible decisions. The irony was devastating. While Juliet was humiliating me for being an economic burden on their future marriage, I was literally the only reason they could afford that marriage. While they were planning to strip me of my apartment to solve their financial problems, I had been solving those problems in secret for years. I closed the folder and looked toward the ballroom once more. The lights were still shining, the music was still playing, the guests were still celebrating, but in less than 5 minutes, Carlos would arrive with the final documents I needed. In less than 5 minutes, the process of cutting all the financial threads I had used to protect a son who had chosen to betray me would begin. This is not revenge, I reminded myself. This is justice. This is about teaching them that actions have consequences, that greed has a price, that family is not something you can sell for economic convenience. I had tried to protect Ethan from reality for too long, and that protection had corrupted him until he was unrecognizable. Headlights of a car approached the parking lot, illuminating the night with a white light that momentarily blinded me. It was Carlos, punctual as always, arriving with the documents that would change everything forever. I got out of my car and walked toward him, feeling how each step took me further away from the Aurora I had been and closer to the woman I needed to become. "Mrs. Hughes," Carlos said as he got out of his car, a legal brief under his arm. "Are you completely sure about this? Once we go in there will be no way to undo what is about to happen." I looked toward the ballroom one last time, where my son and his new wife were probably still celebrating their victory over the useless old woman they had just humiliated. "I have never been more sure of something in my life, Carlos. It's time for them to meet the real Aurora Hughes." Carlos opened his folder under the parking lot light and began to show me the documents he had prepared with his characteristic efficiency. "Mrs. Hughes, here is the order for the immediate suspension of all bank transfers you have been making in Ethan Hughes's name," he said, pointing to the first paper. "Also, here is the notice of cancellation of the lease agreement that you had confidentially guaranteed. The landlord will receive this document tomorrow morning." I took the papers with trembling but determined hands. Each document represented a thread that I had carefully woven for years to protect my son, and now I was cutting those threads one by one. "And the payment for the ballroom?" I asked, although I already knew the answer. "Canceled," Carlos confirmed. "The deposit you had guaranteed will be withdrawn tonight. They will have until tomorrow to find an alternative form of payment." The magnitude of what I was about to do hit me like a cold wave. For 3 years, I had been the invisible safety net that had kept Ethan and Juliet's lives afloat. The apartment they lived in, the car he drove, even the wedding that was taking place at that very moment had all been made possible by my secret financial support. And now, in a single night, I was going to withdraw all that support definitively. "Carlos, I want you to understand something," I said to him as I signed each document with a determination I hadn't felt in years. "This is not cruelty or revenge. This is the only way for them to learn the real value of things. For too long, I protected them from the consequences of their actions, and that protection corrupted them into people I don't recognize." "I understand perfectly, Mrs. Hughes," Carlos replied with genuine respect in his voice. "In my 30 years as a financial advisor, I have seen many families destroyed by greed and ingratitude. What you are doing requires more courage than most people possess." His words gave me the final strength I needed to take the last step. We walked together toward the ballroom entrance, and with each step, I could feel my heart beating faster. It wasn't nervousness I felt. It was a strange mix of sadness for what I had lost and anticipation for what I was about to regain. My dignity, my self-respect, my right to be treated as a human being instead of as a resource to be exploited. The music stopped abruptly when we entered the ballroom. 130 pairs of eyes turned toward us, and I could see the confusion on the guests' faces. Some recognized Carlos immediately. After all, he had handled the financial affairs of several prominent families in the city for decades. His presence at social events usually meant that something important was about to happen. Juliet was the first to react. "What are you doing here, Aurora?" she shouted at me from the center of the dance floor, where she had been posing for photos with Ethan. "You already left once. Wasn't that enough drama for one night?" Her voice carried that arrogance I had come to know so well, but I could detect a note of nervousness that hadn't been there before. "Ladies and gentlemen," Carlos said in a clear, professional voice, "I apologize for interrupting this celebration, but I have urgent legal matters to discuss with Mr. Ethan Hughes and Mrs. Juliet Dawson." The silence that followed was so deep you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. Some guests began to pull out their cell phones, sensing they were about to witness something extraordinary. Ethan slowly approached, his face pale and his eyes full of confusion. "What's going on here, Mom?" he asked me, in a voice that no longer sounded as confident as it had when he had humiliated me just minutes before. "Who is this man, and why is he talking about legal matters?" I could see his hands trembling slightly as he adjusted his tie, a nervous gesture he had had since childhood. "Ethan," I said in a voice firmer than it had sounded in months, "this is Carlos Jones, my financial and legal advisor. He has come to deliver some documents that I think you will find very enlightening." Carlos opened his folder and took out the first document. "Mr. Ethan Hughes, you are hereby notified that the financial guarantee your mother had provided for your lease agreement has been immediately canceled. Your landlord will be notified tomorrow morning, and you will have 30 days to find a new guarantor or vacate the property." All the color drained from Ethan's face. "Financial guarantee," he murmured, looking at me with eyes that were beginning to fill with comprehension and horror. "Mom, what is he talking about?" But I could see from his expression that a part of him already knew. For years, he had suspected that his financial luck wasn't completely natural, but he had chosen not to ask questions because the answers might have been uncomfortable. "Also," Carlos continued relentlessly, "the monthly transfers of $4,500 that your mother had been making to your personal accounts have been permanently suspended. This includes payments for credit cards, car insurance, and various other expenses that you believed were being covered by other sources." Juliet let out a gasp that echoed throughout the ballroom. "That's impossible!" she exclaimed, running toward us, her wedding dress dragging on the floor. "Ethan doesn't